I was 37 years old when I finally understood why my body had been a graveyard for 6 children. I heard it through the door of my hospital room, my hand frozen on the handle, my 7th pregnancy barely 12 weeks along. The voices were unmistakable. My husband Julian's measured cadence, my brother Ethan's rough urgency. "You said this was the last one," Ethan was saying, his voice cracking. "She's already lost 6. If she loses this one, she'll never carry again. Julian, I'm telling you." "Ethan, I know." Julian's voice was calm, almost gentle, the same voice he used to soothe me after each miscarriage, the same voice that had held me through sleepless nights and endless tears. Daphne promised point one more, and then it's over. We go back to our lives. She goes back to her family. I stay with Vivian. One more? To honor 7 years of something that should have ended a decade ago. Daphne and I were together before Vivian. You know that. She was my first love. I owe her this. She needs closure. And then I can finally be the husband Vivian deserves. I stood there, my hand pressed against the cold door, trying to make the words mean something else, trying to find a translation that didn't shatter me. Daphne was Julian's ex-girlfriend, the one who disappeared from his life before I met him, the one he never talked about, but whose name I'd seen scrawled in the margins of his old notebooks. The one who'd resurfaced 3 years ago when I was pregnant with our second child. I always thought she was just a friend, someone from his past who needed support. I thought the accidents were just accidents. You knew what she was doing, didn't you? Ethan's voice again, sharper now. The ghost in Vivian's house, the things that kept moving, the clothes that got shredded. You knew that was Daphne the whole time, and you let Vivian think she was losing her mind. Julian was quiet for a moment, then, "Ethan, Daphne's been using an app-based surveillance system, a ghost camera paired with directional speakers and those LED filaments. I helped her set it up. It was necessary. Necessary for what? To keep Vivian's attention on herself, to make her doubt her own instincts. If she'd been paying attention to Daphne, she would have figured it out years ago. This was cleaner. Cleaner." Ethan's voice was ragged. "You let Daphne use those tech toys to terrorize my sister, and you call it cleaner?" Daphne never touched her, not physically, not until the last one died, and even then it was important to her. She needed to feel like she was part of it. She needed to feel like she had control over the ending. The door was cold against my palm. I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. I couldn't feel anything except the slow, deliberate sinking of my heart into something dark and irreparable. "Ethan." Julian's voice changed, became the soothing one again. "I know this is hard for you, but think about what she gave up. She gave up 7 years of her life for me. She gave up a career in the city. She gave up everything. All I'm asking is for her to have this one last thing, point one last symbol, and then it's over. And Vivian? What does Vivian get? She gets me. She gets my full attention. She gets the life she always wanted. She has me now, and she'll always have me. I've told Daphne that. She understands. Does she? Because the way Daphne has operated. Ethan, she'll do what I ask. The arrangement was made in the beginning. We'll be together 7 years, while I take care of Daphne's exit. And every time Vivian got pregnant, Daphne had a way to help. Just another form of closure. This last one will be different. I'll sign the consent form myself. I'll tell Vivian it's for her health. His voice was so reasonable, so steady, as if he were discussing quarterly earnings instead of a living child he was planning to help kill. Daphne gets to write the book, Ethan said bitterly. 7 dead kids, 1 for each of the 7 years she was your mistress. How poetic. Don't say it like that. Daphne and I were never. I loved her. Before Vivian. But I love Vivian too. It's complicated. I have to make peace with the past before I can fully commit to the future. There are 6 dead children, Julian. 6. And you're about to make it 7. 1 more. Then I'm done. I promise. I pushed the door open. They both went white. Julian's face crumpled first, not with shame, but with calculation. He was trying to gauge how much I'd heard, how much damage control he needed to perform. Ethan's face broke open. His eyes were wet, his mouth moving soundlessly. He'd known. My own brother had known for years. Vivian. Julian started, reaching for me, his voice already shifting into its familiar, soothing register. How long have you? I stepped back. Long enough. Listen, I can explain. Explain what? How you and Daphne turned my uterus into a memorial for your failed relationship. How you helped her play poltergeist in her home while I miscarried child after child. My voice was low, steady, terrifyingly calm. I'm tired of explanations, Julian, and I'm tired of being the idiot who believed you. Ethan tried to step forward. Vivian, I'm so sorry. Daphne threatened me. She said if I told you, she'd destroy everything. Everything you helped her destroy anyway. I looked at him, this man who'd raised me after our parents died, who'd held me through every loss. You let her attack me. You let her stalk me in my own home. You let her kill my children. And you thought I'd just never find out? I thought I was protecting you. From what? From the truth that my husband and my brother were in business with a woman who wanted me broken. Julian stepped forward again, his hand out. Vivian, we can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can sign divorce papers, Julian. That's what we can do. I turned and walked out of the hospital room. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene in the hallway. I walked to my car, drove home, and started packing. But not before I called a specialist I knew, a woman who worked in cyber surveillance, a friend of a friend from the early days of my career, that I told her what I needed. She said it would take 24 hours. I could give it 24 hours. That night, I lay in bed with Julian beside me. He was pretending to sleep. I was pretending to sleep. The house was quiet. But I knew now what was in the quiet. The hidden cameras. The LED filaments that flickered at the edges of my vision. The speakers that whispered things I'd always blamed on my own exhaustion. Daphne had been in my house for years, watching me, haunting me, helping Julian choose which of my children would die next. 24 hours. The next morning, Julian left for work. I heard his car pull out of the driveway, and I waited 5 minutes before I made my move. I found Daphne's phone's cloud backup. It was linked to the house's internal monitoring system. She'd been controlling everything from her own device, using it to manipulate the LED panels, the speakers, even the light timers. I rerouted the system. Then I waited. Daphne came that night. She didn't know I could see her. The LED panels were still active, but I changed the permissions. She thought she was invisible. She thought she was still using the ghost to torment me. She walked through the living room, smirking, her phone in her hand. She was directing the lights to flicker, the speakers to play low ambient sounds that used to make my stomach turn. I watched her on my tablet, sitting in the bedroom with the door cracked. Vivian, Julian's voice from downstairs. He was home early. I brought dinner. Daphne froze. She pressed a button on her phone, and the LED system went dark. She was good at hiding. But I'd already rerouted the feed. I saw her slip into the guest room, the one we never used, the one where she'd been hiding for years. I waited until Julian was in the kitchen, heating up the takeout. Then I walked to the guest room and opened the door. Daphne was standing by the window, her phone in her hand, her face a mask of shock. She'd been using that room for years, staying there when Julian was working late, sleeping in my bed after I'd been drugged into oblivion. Vivian, she recovered quickly. I was looking for a charger, Julian said. Julian didn't say anything. I stepped inside and closed the door. I know, Daphne. I know everything. Her face shifted. The mask of innocence dropped, replaced by something colder. Then you know you're not going to win this. I'm not trying to win anything. I'm just trying to leave. Leave. She laughed. And go where? You have nothing, Vivian. No money, no career, no family who actually cares about you. Ethan was the only one, and he chose me over you years ago. Did he? Or did he choose your threats? She shrugged. Same difference. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. The video feed of her entering the guest room, the LED system showing her active control, the timestamps matching every haunting incident I'd ever reported. I've got everything, I said. Years of it, all routed through your own cloud backup. Her face went pale. I'm not going to show this to the police. I'm not going to show it to Julian, and I'm going to show it to the press, Daphne. Every media outlet that covers your family's charitable foundation, every reporter who's ever written a flattering profile of you and Julian. I'm going to show them exactly who their golden couple really is. You wouldn't. Watch me. I left her in the guest room. She didn't follow. She was too busy trying to figure out how to spin this, how to fix it. But I'd already made my move. The next morning, I sent Julian a text. I'm leaving. Don't try to find me. The divorce papers are on your desk. I've already signed. Then I blocked his number. I walked out of the house with one suitcase and a bag full of documents. I didn't look back. Daphne was on the news that evening. The video had leaked. The reporters were calling it the ghost in the guest room. Her family's foundation issued a statement about privacy concerns. Julian's firm put out a press release about domestic matters being handled internally. I watched it from a hotel room 3 states away. Then I got a call from Ethan. Vivian, I know you hate me, and I understand if you never want to speak to me again. But I need you to know, I'm not defending what I did. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need you to know that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. You can't make up for what they took from me, Ethan. I know, but I can try. I hung up. I didn't know if I'd ever forgive him. I didn't know if I'd ever forgive Julian. But I knew one thing for sure. I was done being the victim. I was done being the one who lost everything. I was going to build something new, something that couldn't be taken away. And I was going to make sure Daphne and Julian never forgot what they'd done to me. I stayed in that hotel room for 3 weeks, watching the news cycle devour Julian and Daphne's reputations. The ghost in the guest room, story had legs. Daphne's family foundation lost 3 major donors. Julian's firm was hit with an ethics investigation. The press had found photos of them together, Daphne and Julian, arms around each other at industry events I'd never attended, smiling like they were the couple everyone envied. I watched it all from a cheap room with bad coffee and a TV that flickered when I changed channels. And I started planning. The first thing I did was call a lawyer, not a divorce attorney. I'd already filed the papers and Julian's lawyers were fighting them, but that was a separate mess. I needed someone who understood intellectual property, corporate structures, and how to build something bulletproof. Meredith Collins was a former corporate litigator who'd left her firm to start her own practice. She specialized in women who'd been burned by powerful men and wanted to burn back with contracts instead of gasoline. Vivian Cross, she said when I called. I've been following your story. Then you know I need help. I know you need more than help. You need a strategy. We met at a coffee shop near my hotel. Meredith was in her late 50s, sharp, focused, the kind of woman who'd been underestimated her whole life and had spent every moment since proving everyone wrong. "Tell me what you want," she said. "Financial independence, complete separation from Julian, and enough leverage to make sure he never comes after me again." She nodded. "The divorce is going to be messy. He's going to claim you abandoned the marriage, that you're unstable, that the leak was your fault." "The leak was my fault. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't." "Then we need to make sure the court understands why you did it. The evidence of Daphne's harassment, the medical records, the pattern of abuse, all of it. You'll need to prove the pregnancies were intentionally terminated. I'll need to prove Julian was complicit. That's the only thing that matters for the divorce. If we can show he actively participated in harming you, we can get the settlement we want." I thought about it. What about the estate? What about it? He's got assets in the Caymans. I'm sure there's more offshore. I didn't care about the money before, but I care about the leverage. Meredith smiled. That's the right answer. The next phase of the plan was more personal. I needed to find Julian's vulnerability. Everyone had one, and I'd been married to him long enough to know his. He was terrified of his father. Julian's father, Walter Cross, was a retired tech mogul who'd built a fortune in telecommunications. He'd been estranged from Julian for years, ever since Julian had dropped out of Stanford to pursue a creative path that Walter considered beneath him. Julian had clawed his way back into the family's good graces by becoming successful on his own terms, but I knew the old man's approval still meant everything to him. If I could get to Walter, I could get to Julian. Meredith made a few calls. A week later, I was sitting in Walter Cross's living room, drinking coffee from a cup that probably cost more than my first car. "You're the girl who burned my son's house down," he said. He was 80, gaunt, razor sharp, with eyes that missed nothing. "I burned his reputation. The house is still standing. Details, details." He set down his cup. "What do you want, Vivian?" "I want you to know what your son did. Not the version he's told you. The truth." I showed him the documents, the hospital records, the data receipts for the LED system, and the directional speakers. The evidence that Julian had been part of a conspiracy to terminate 6 of my pregnancies and had planned to make it 7. Walter read everything. His face didn't change. "Did you know?" I asked. "About Daphne?" "Yes." "About the children?" "No." He set the file down. But I'm not surprised. Julian has always had a talent for getting what he wants, no matter the cost. I want him to pay for what he's done. Walter was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "And what do you want from me?" "Leverage. Information about his offshore accounts. Anything that will make this divorce go the way I need it to." "I can give you that, but I want something in return." "Name it." "When this is over, don't destroy him completely. Let him walk away with something, enough to rebuild. Not because he deserves it, but because the alternative is a son who's been completely broken, and I'm too old to watch that happen." I could have argued that I could have demanded that I be the one who determined the terms. But I'd learned something from watching Julian and Daphne. Compromise was the art of making your opponent think they'd won. "You'll get what you want from me," I said, "but I can't promise what the courts will decide." Good enough. The weeks that followed were a blur of negotiations. Meredith and I built the case against Julian, and we found forensic accountants who uncovered the Cayman accounts. We traced the payments Daphne had received from Julian's personal foundation. We built a timeline of the harassment, the disappearances, the accidents that had actually been engineered. Julian's lawyers offered a settlement. "We'll give you $2 million, they said, in exchange for your silence." $2 million is less than what I'd get in court, I told Meredith. Then we asked for 8. We got 6. The day the settlement was finalized, I sat in Meredith's office and signed the papers. "Congratulations," she said. "You're officially divorced." I don't feel divorced. I feel like I've just finished the first round. Then what's round 2? I thought about Daphne. She'd been quiet since the news broke, but I knew she wasn't done. She'd been stripped of her foundation, her reputation, her carefully constructed life. People like her didn't disappear quietly. They just regrouped. "I need to build something of my own," I said. "Something that can't be taken away." Meredith nodded. "What's your plan?" I'd been thinking about it for weeks. The answer came to me in the middle of a sleepless night, somewhere between a rerun of a cooking show and an infomercial for a self-cleaning oven. Adaptive clothing. "Excuse me?" During one of my pregnancies, I couldn't find anything comfortable to wear. Everything either didn't fit or was designed for women who weren't constantly nauseated and exhausted. There's a market for functional, stylish, adaptive clothing, not just for pregnant women, but for anyone with changing bodies. That's a long way from corporate law. I know, but I've already started drafting a business plan. Meredith looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "Vivian Cross, the entrepreneur," she said. "I like it." The next year was the hardest of my life. I put every penny of the settlement into the business. Not all of it, but enough to get started that I found a manufacturer who could do small runs. I built a website myself. Using templates and YouTube tutorials, I hired a part-time designer who worked from her kitchen table. I named the company 6. It was a defiant choice, a constant reminder of what I'd survived. Some people thought it was a branding decision. Only a few knew the truth. The first collection sold out in 2 weeks. I'd targeted maternity wear, but the real market was bigger than I'd expected. Women with chronic illnesses, women with body dysmorphia, women who'd had hysterectomies, mastectomies, C-sections. Women who'd been told their bodies were failures and wanted to dress like they weren't. I started getting letters. Thank you for making clothes that fit. I felt invisible until I wore your dress. You made me feel like I could be seen. I was 39, a year past the end of my marriage, and I was finally building something that mattered. But I knew Daphne wasn't done with me. She showed up at my first public event, a small launch party I'd thrown in a rented space in the city. She was wearing designer clothes, smiling like she owned the room. Vivian, she said, extending her hand. I'm so proud of what you've built. I didn't take it. What do you want, Daphne? To apologize. I know I did terrible things. I know I hurt you, but I've changed. I've been going to therapy. I'm working on myself. You try to kill my children. I know. Her voice was steady, practiced. And I'll never forgive myself for that. But I wanted to come here and tell you that I'm trying to be better. I looked at her, this woman who'd stalked me for years, who'd helped destroy my family, who was now standing in my space, asking for absolution. I don't forgive you, I said. I don't think I ever will, but I'm not going to let you take up space in my head. She nodded, her face unreadable. That's fair. She walked out of the event. I watched her go, and something shifted in me. Not forgiveness, nothing like that, but a kind of peace. The knowledge that I'd built something she couldn't touch. The event continued, and I smiled, shook hands, talked to customers. But I was somewhere else entirely. In the hotel room where I'd first learned the truth. In the hospital room where I'd heard Julian's voice through the door. In the guest room where I confronted Daphne for the last time. I was all those places at once, and I was none of them. I was here building something new, one stitch at a time. Later that night, Ethan called. I saw the coverage, he said. The event looked beautiful. It was. Vivian, I know I don't have the right to ask, but can we meet? Just for coffee. I won't explain. What's there to explain? Everything. Why I did what I did. Why I stayed silent. Why I was so afraid of Daphne. You were afraid of her because she threatened you? Because she threatened you. She said if I told you the truth, she'd kill you. And I believed her. I was quiet for a long moment. Then, when and where? We met at the coffee shop where I'd first met Meredith. Ethan looked older, thinner, his eyes shadowed with something that might have been regret. I'm not going to ask for forgiveness, he said. I just want you to know I was weak. I was so afraid of losing you that I let someone else take control of your life. You didn't lose me. You lost yourself. I know. He sat down across from me. I'm in therapy now. I'm trying to get better. I don't know if I ever will, but I'm trying. I looked at this man who'd raised me, who'd held me through the worst of it, who'd also betrayed me in the worst possible way. If you ever lie to me again, I will never speak to you again. I understand. And if you ever try to protect me by keeping secrets again, I will cut you out of my life completely. I understand. Then we can try. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even trust, but it was a beginning. A year later, Six had expanded to include adaptive maternity wear, post-surgical clothing, and a line of workwear for women who'd been told their bodies were unprofessional. I was profiled in magazines, invited to speak at conferences, asked to contribute to policy discussions about workplace inclusivity. I'd built something real. Julian was still around somewhere, but I'd stopped tracking his movements. I'd stopped caring. The divorce had left him with enough to rebuild, just as I'd promised Walter. Daphne had also rebuilt. I'd heard she'd started a foundation for mental health, of all things. She'd made a public apology that went viral. She was trying to rehabilitate her image. But I wasn't going to let her into my life again. I'd learned the hard way that some people were dangerous, and not just because of what they'd done, but because of how they'd make you feel about what they'd done. I'd been the victim of people who didn't value me. Now, I was the creator of something that did. I had no children. I'd given up on that dream after everything. But I had a company that felt like a child, something I'd nurtured, protected, grown from nothing. I had employees who believed in me. I had a life that felt like my own. That night, I went back to the hotel room where it all started. Not the same one, that building had been demolished, but a place that reminded me of that moment when I'd made the decision to leave. I sat on the bed, looked at the city lights, and thought about everything I'd been through. I'd lost 6 children. I'd lost a marriage. I'd almost lost myself. But I'd found something better. I'd found the woman I was always meant to become. The phone buzzed. A text from Meredith. Congratulations. You made the Forbes list. The 30 under 40 foot thing, except you're 40, so I don't know why they're calling it that. I laughed. A real laugh, the kind I'd forgotten I could make. I'll take it, I typed back. Then I turned off the phone and went to sleep. Tomorrow there would be more work, more decisions, more battles to fight. But tonight, I was just grateful to be here. Grateful to be alive. Grateful to be free. I was 41 when Daphne's Foundation announced its first major initiative, and I knew immediately that it was aimed at me. The press release crossed my desk on a Tuesday morning. The Phoenix Project, a mental health initiative for survivors of domestic abuse. Daphne's face smiled from the announcement, fresh and earnest, the same expression she'd worn at my launch party. She'd hired a publicist, a branding team, and a crisis management firm to rehabilitate her image, and it was working. But the details told a different story. The Phoenix Project was partnering with a research institute to study the psychological effects of prolonged conflict in high-stress relationships. The lead researcher was a woman named Dr. Nora Ashford, who specialized in what she called victim pathology. It grew good hat. She was a best-selling author, a frequent media commentator, and a vocal advocate for both sides in domestic disputes. Vivian, Meredith said when I called her, I know what you're thinking, but you can't prove she's targeting you. I don't need to prove it. I just need to be ready. The ready part took the form of a new initiative. The 6 Voices series, I'd been working on it for months, quietly, without telling anyone. It was a collection of stories from women who'd survived reproductive trauma, miscarriages, stillbirths, forced terminations, medical negligence. I'd interviewed dozens of women, and I'd built a website where their stories were published, anonymously or otherwise. I launched 6 Voices 2 weeks after Daphne's announcement. It went viral. Not because I'd planned it, but because the stories were too powerful to ignore. That's when the first anonymous email arrived. Vivian, you don't know me, but I worked for Daphne's Foundation. She's been funding research that's designed to discredit you and your brand. She's planning to publish a study that claims women who have multiple miscarriages are psychologically unstable. I stared at the screen, my hands cold. I called Meredith. We have a leak. A leak. Someone inside Daphne's operation just sent me a warning. She's planning to publish a study that paints women like me as unreliable witnesses. Meredith was silent for a long moment. Then, that's a serious accusation. Can you verify it? Not yet, but I know someone who can. I called Dr. Nora Ashford directly. She answered on the second ring. Dr. Ashford, this is Vivian Cross. I'm the founder of 6. I'm calling because I've heard about your research on victim pathology, and I'd like to discuss it. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm not sure that's appropriate. I'm not asking for your findings. I'm asking if you'd be willing to meet with me and some of the women I represent. I think you might find their experiences valuable for your research. There's an ongoing study. I can't share details. I'm not asking for details. I'm asking for conversation. She agreed to meet. I didn't know if she'd tell me anything useful, but I knew that the best way to disarm an opponent was to make them think you were on their side. The meeting was at a neutral location, a small restaurant in the city, quiet enough for conversation. Dr. Ashford arrived looking nervous, clutching a folder like it contained state secrets. Ms. Cross, thank you for meeting me. Thank you for coming. I gestured to the chair across from me. I want to be clear. I'm not here to attack your work. I'm here to understand it. She relaxed slightly. I appreciate that. Most people don't want to hear about victim pathology. They want to hear about how the victim is always right. And you don't believe that? I believe that human beings are complex. A woman who's been through trauma can sometimes be unreliable, not because she's lying, but because her memories are distorted by the pain she's experienced. I nodded. That's a fair point. But what about women whose trauma was caused by deliberate harm? Are their memories still unreliable? Dr. Ashford hesitated. That's a different category. Is it? Because in my experience, the same people who dismiss trauma also dismiss the evidence of trauma. They say, she's too emotional to be trusted. They say, she's not remembering it correctly. They use the same language, whether the trauma was accidental or deliberate. The professor's face had gone pale. Someone told me you were studying women like me, women who've had multiple miscarriages, that you were planning to publish a study that would paint us as unstable. I can't comment on that. You don't have to comment. I just want you to know that I know, and that I'll be watching. I stood up and left the restaurant. 3 days later, Dr. Ashford called me. Ms. Cross, I want to be honest with you that I've been approached by a foundation to fund a study on reproductive trauma. They asked me to focus on a specific subset of patients, women with repeated pregnancy loss who are involved in contentious divorces. Which foundation? She was silent for a moment. I can't name it, but I think you know. Then you also know that their goal isn't research. It's character assassination. Ms. Cross, I didn't know that when I signed the contract, but I've been having second thoughts ever since we met. I think I need to reconsider my involvement. That's a good decision, Dr. Ashford. I hope you find a way to do research that helps women instead of harming them. I hung up and called Meredith. She's backing out. Which one? Dr. Ashford. Daphne is faith researcher. She's reconsidering her involvement. That's a win, but you know Daphne will find someone else. I know, but now I know her playbook. The next move came a month later. Daphne's Foundation announced a new partnership with a large medical institution, a study on the psychological effects of prolonged fertility struggles. The lead researcher was a man I'd never heard of, but his credentials were impeccable. I called my lawyer. I need to know who's funding the study. Vivian, I can't just. I can't be on the receiving end of another attack. Not after everything. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll try. The funding trail led back to Julian. He'd been quietly funding Daphne's Foundation for years, using shell companies and offshore accounts. The divorce settlement hadn't stopped him. I called Julian's father, Walter. Your son is still funding Daphne's operations. I know. How? He's not as careful as he thinks. I've been watching him for years. Then you know she's planning a study on women like me. She's trying to discredit me. I know. Walter's voice was tired. And I'm going to stop it. Not because I care about you, though I respect what you've built. But because my son is destroying his own legacy, and I'm not going to let him. What are you going to do? Cut off the funding. All of it. Every dollar that's been routed through Julian's accounts. I've already started the process. I was speechless. Vivian, I don't expect you to forgive my son. I don't even expect you to like him. But I want you to know that he's not the only one who can make decisions in this family. The funding dried up within a month. Daphne's foundation announced a restructuring. The study was put on hold. The researchers who'd been hired were let go. I didn't celebrate. I knew the game wasn't over. Daphne would find another way. She always did. But for now, I was safe. The next year was the busiest of my life. Point 6 expanded into a full clothing line. With distribution in major department stores, Point 6 Voices grew into a platform for thousands of women. I was invited to speak at the United Nations, to testify before Congress, to advise on policy. I was no longer just a survivor. I was an advocate. Daphne's foundation, meanwhile, had rebranded. She was now focused on women's empowerment through mental health advocacy. She'd pivoted again, finding a new angle, a new way to stay relevant. But I was watching, and I was ready. I was 43 when I saw the email. IT had been forwarded to me by someone on my staff, an assistant who'd been scanning press mentions. The subject line was, an open letter to Vivian Cross from Daphne Hayes. I opened it. Vivian, I've been trying to reach you for months, and I know I don't have the right to ask for your time, but I'm asking anyway, and I've changed. I'm not the person I was when I hurt you. I'm in a different place now, and I want to show you that I'm serious about making amends. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a conversation. Just one. In a public place with witnesses if you want them. Please consider it. I set down the phone and stared at the wall. Are you going to respond? Meredith asked. I don't know. What does your gut say? My gut said no. My head said no. But something else, some tiny, stubborn part of me that still believed people could change, said maybe. One conversation, I said, in a public place, with witnesses. The meeting was scheduled for a week later, at a coffee shop that was crowded enough to feel safe. I brought Meredith. Daphne brought no one. She looked different, thinner, older, her face softer than I remembered. She was wearing a simple dress, no designer labels, no expensive jewelry. Thank you for coming, she said. I'm not sure why I did. I'm not sure either, but I wanted to try. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Daphne said, I was so angry at you for so long, not because of anything you did, but because you had something I couldn't have. You had Julian. You had the life I wanted, and I couldn't stand it. So you kill my children. I made choices I can't undo, and I'll regret them for the rest of my life. But I didn't kill your children. I contributed to their deaths. That's different. It's not different. Not to me. I know. She leaned forward. Vivian, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for understanding. I'm just asking for you to know that I'm trying to be better. And that if there's anything I can do to make up for what I've done, anything, I'll do it. I looked at her, this woman who'd haunted me for years, who'd helped destroy my family, who was now sitting across from me asking for a chance. There's nothing you can do, I said, but I appreciate you trying. I stood up to leave. Daphne reached out, her hand on my arm. I'm pregnant, she said. I froze. I know that's a cruel thing to tell you, but I wanted you to hear it from me. Who is the father? Someone new. Someone who doesn't know about my past. I'm trying to build a life that's different from the one I had. I pulled my arm away. I hope you get what you want. I walked out of the coffee shop and didn't look back. That night, I sat in my apartment and cried. Not for Daphne. Not for her pregnancy. For myself. For the children I'd never had. For the life I'd almost lost. But when the tears stopped, I felt something else. Something like relief. Daphne was moving on. She was building something new, something that didn't involve me, and I could do the same. The next morning, I got a call from Walter. Vivian, I've been thinking about what I said to you years ago. I asked you not to destroy my son completely, and you kept your word. I didn't destroy him. He did that himself. Maybe, but you didn't make it worse, and I want to thank you for that. I didn't do it for you. I know, you did it for yourself, because you're not the kind of person who would destroy someone's life just for revenge. I was quiet for a moment. Then, thank you, Walter. That means something. A month later, I heard that Daphne had left the city. She'd moved to the coast, started a small business, disappeared from the public eye. She'd stopped trying to be a public figure, stopped trying to rehabilitate her image. Maybe she was really changing. Maybe she was just hiding. Either way, she was out of my life. And I was finally free. I was 44 when I wrote the book. It was a memoir, but it wasn't just about me. IT was about all the women who'd survived what I'd survived. The ones who'd lost children, lost partners, lost themselves. The ones who'd rebuilt, one piece at a time. The title was 6, How I Lost Everything and Found Myself. It was published on the anniversary of my last miscarriage, not because I was trying to mark the day, but because that's when the contract came through. The timing felt right. I did the book tour. I spoke to audiences of hundreds. I was interviewed on national television. I became the face of a movement I'd never intended to lead. And every time someone asked me why I'd named the company 6, I told the truth. Because I lost 6 children, I said, and because I refused to let that be the end of my story. The responses were overwhelming. Women wrote to me from all over the world, telling me their stories. I kept every letter, every email, every message. I turned the company's profits into a foundation dedicated to reproductive health and survivors advocacy. I funded research, supported clinics, trained counselors. I built something that would outlast me. The final book event was in New York at a packed theater. I stood on the stage and looked out at the crowd, and I saw my brother Ethan in the audience. He was crying. I was crying too. Thank you, I said, for being here, for being part of this, for showing me that the worst thing that happens to you doesn't have to be the last thing that happens to you. The applause was deafening, but it didn't feel like praise. It felt like permission. Permission to move on. Permission to live. When the event ended, I walked out into the night. The city was bright, alive, full of possibilities. I'd done it. I'd survived. And I'd built something that mattered. I was 44, and I was finally truly alive. I was 46 when the call came from Daphne's new husband, and I almost didn't answer. Vivian Cross, the voice said, "My name is Daniel. I'm Daphne's husband. I know I have no right to call you, but I'm desperate." I sat down heavily in my office chair. "What do you want?" "Your help. Daphne's in the hospital. She had a difficult delivery, severe complications. The baby survived, but she's in critical condition. She's been asking for you. I don't know why, but she has." My stomach turned. "I can't do that. Please. She's not the same person who hurt you. She's been in therapy for years. She's done everything she can to make amends. She's changed. People don't change that much." "Some do. Please, just come see her. For a minute. That's all I'm asking." I stared at the wall of my office, the awards on the shelf, the photos of the team, the framed copy of the letter from a woman who told me my clothing line had saved her life. I didn't owe Daphne anything. I owed her nothing. But something in me, the part that still believed in second chances, was already reaching for my coat. The hospital was quiet, clean, and smelled like antiseptic and anxiety. The ICU waiting room was full of people who looked like they'd been there too long. Daniel met me at the door, tall, tired, grateful. "Thank you for coming." "I don't know why I'm here." "She's in room 312. She's conscious, but she's weak. The doctors are cautiously optimistic." I walked into the room. Daphne was pale, smaller than I remembered, connected to machines that beeped in steady rhythms. Her eyes fluttered open when she heard my footsteps. "Vivian," her voice was a whisper. "I didn't think you'd come." "Neither did I." She tried to smile. "The baby's healthy. A girl. I named her Hope." "That's a heavy name." "I know, but she's going to have a different life than I did. A different life than I gave you." I didn't respond. "Vivian, I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I've been working on a project and a way to make amends. I've been working with researchers to identify women who've been through reproductive trauma, the same kind you survived, and I'm funding a program to help them get counseling, legal support, medical care." "That sounds like a good project." "It's a start, and I wanted you to know that it's inspired by you, by what you went through, by how you survived." I looked at this woman who'd been my tormentor, and I saw someone who'd been broken too. Not in the same way, not by the same things, but broken nonetheless. "I can't forgive you," I said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever, but I can respect the work you're trying to do." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "That's all I'm asking for." I left the hospital and walked out into the bright afternoon sun. The city was bustling, full of people who had no idea what I'd just experienced. I called Ethan. "I saw Daphne." "You saw why?" "She asked me to come. She's in the hospital. She had a baby." "Vivian, you don't owe her anything." "I know, but I did it anyway, and I think I might be able to let go. Not all the way, but a little." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's more than I ever managed." "You're still trying." "I'm trying every day. It's just not always enough." I thought about my brother, who'd betrayed me, who'd chosen Daphne over me, who'd spent the last few years trying to prove he wasn't the same person. "Ethan, I want you to do something for me. Anything. Come work for me. At the foundation. I need someone I can trust. Someone who knows the history but wants to help build the future." He was quiet for a long moment. "Are you serious?" "I'm serious." "Why would you trust me after everything?" "Because I know what it's like to be given a second chance. And I know what it's like to waste one. You haven't wasted yours." He started crying. I let him. 6 months later, Ethan moved to the city and started working at the foundation. He was awkward, uncertain, still carrying the weight of his mistakes. But he was trying. The foundation's work expanded. We opened clinics in underserved areas. We trained counselors in trauma-informed care. We funded research into reproductive health that was actually designed to help women, not discredit them. Daphne's program, the one she'd mentioned in the hospital, was integrated into our work. She'd given us the funding, the research, the infrastructure. She'd quietly stepped away from public life, focusing on her recovery and her daughter. I didn't become her friend. I didn't forgive her completely, but I stopped hating her. That was enough. One night, Ethan and I were reviewing grant applications together. He'd gotten good at it. Careful, thorough, fair. "How do you do it?" he asked. "Stay focused on the work, even with all the history?" "I don't think about the history. I think about the future, about the women who are going to get help because of what we're building. That's what matters. Even when the history is so painful, especially then." He nodded. "I'm trying to be that way too." "I know you are. That's why you're still here." On the 10-year anniversary of the founding of Six, I hosted an event, not a celebration of myself, a celebration of the women who'd made the work possible. I invited everyone who'd been part of the journey, the early employees, the researchers, the donors, the survivors who'd shared their stories. Daphne was there. She'd come with Hope, a beautiful 5-year-old who was the center of her world. She didn't approach me. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. Ethan gave a speech. He talked about redemption, about second chances, about the power of showing up even when you don't deserve to. Every day, he said, I'm reminded that I don't deserve the grace I've been given, but I'm trying to earn it, one day at a time. I watched him speak, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Peace. He'd stopped running from his mistakes. He was learning to live with them. Walter Cross was there too. He'd come alone, without Julian, who was still somewhere out there, rebuilding his own life far from the spotlight. You've done well, Vivian, Walter said, shaking my hand. Better than I ever expected. I had help. You had determination. That's more important than help. I nodded. Thank you for backing me in the beginning. I backed you because I saw something in you that I'd never seen in my son, integrity. The event ended. I went back to my apartment, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat on the balcony overlooking the city. The skyline glittered, full of lights and possibilities. I was 48 years old, and I'd built something that would outlast me. I thought about the 6 children I'd lost. I still thought about them sometimes, especially at night. They were part of me, woven into the fabric of who I'd become. They taught me things I couldn't have learned any other way, about loss, about grief, about the importance of fighting for the life you want. And I thought about all the women I'd helped, all the stories I'd heard, all the futures I'd helped build. I'd given them a voice. I'd given them a platform. I'd given them permission to be seen. That was enough. That was everything. The phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Thank you for not giving up on me. I typed back. Thank you for not giving up on yourself. I put down the phone and watched the stars appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. I was finally, truly home. The next morning, I started planning the next phase, a new initiative, a new partnership.